2016, I graduated from college, and then I was planning on getting a full-time job and doing what everyone does when they graduate. And God was really pressing in and saying, I want you to take a year off, and I want you to go on a mission trip. And I was like, no way, I'm not doing that. I want to do what all my friends are doing. I want to, finally get to use my degree. So the more I started interviewing and looking at places, God just kept shutting the door every time. Until finally I said, all right, God, if this is what you want me to do, you have to open up the door. And it was about 2 months before we were about to leave. And I needed a lot of money to raise in that time. And God provided all the money I needed to go on the trip. And so that was a sign to say, okay, this is what you want me to do. And so our mission trip was a little different because we spent 1 month in a country and we traveled for 11 months. So we ended up going to 11 different countries. And we didn't have a set ministry host. And so the focus of the trip was really listening to God's voice and following what the Holy Spirit was telling you to do. And so we would go to a country and we would pray and we would say, all right, God, we have nowhere to stay. We don't know what we're going to do. We don't know where we're going to serve. Can you show up for us? And every single time he showed up in amazing ways. And it's really cool because Buddy's going through Hebrews, and last week he did the verse that was our verse for our trip, and it was Hebrews 3:7, and it says, today when you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. And so just, an encouragement that when you hear God speak to you, listen to what he's telling you because he knows best, and he knows what you need more than we know what we need. And so I won't get into that too much, but we traveled for a year. It's actually where I met my wife. We were not married at the time, so we didn't know each other at the time. We met in Uganda, and we just happened to live 30 minutes from each other, which was another God story. So we get back from our trip, and we're really missing doing ministry. And I was like, well, I know a place called Kensington. I know there's a lot of homeless people. Let's just go down there and see what God has for us. And at the time, there were a lot of people under the bridges. So we came one day, and we just started walking under the bridges and praying with people. And we actually met Calvin there, and he was singing, and he had his Bible. And so we were walking with him and praying with people and getting to know people. And it was amazing how God works because we just parked our car. We had no idea where we were. We never heard of Rock Ministries. And on the way back, as we were walking back to our car, we passed the church, and we saw the Jesus graffiti outside. And then we looked in the window, and we saw the boxing ring. We were like, oh, that's weird. That's weird that it's a church, and it has a boxing gym. I've never heard that before. It's probably the only church in America that has boxing and church and Jesus. So we were like, oh, that's pretty cool. We should check it out. So that Sunday we went. And the other amazing thing that God worked out is that Sunday that we went, Buddy gave his testimony. And it's one of the only times that I've heard the full testimony. And we were just blown away about how amazing his story was and how he was such a man of God and how he followed the Holy Spirit. And just this whole ministry is because he listened to what God was telling him to do. And we were like, we had such peace, and we knew this is where we want to be when we get married. This is where we want to serve because we see his leadership. And so that was about December, and then so we decided to get married in May. And then we had been coming for a few months, and me and my wife decided we wanted to move to Kensington, and we didn't have a house to stay, and we couldn't find a place to rent. And one day God just told me, he said, I want you to pray for a free house. And I was like, no way, God, that's crazy. Nobody's just going to hand you the keys to their house. But if you open the Word and you see all of the things that God did for Noah, it never rained before. He didn't know what rain was. He was probably like, God, you're crazy. Why are you telling me to build an ark for something I've never seen before? But he was obedient in doing that. And Abraham, he told him, I want you to sacrifice your son. And he was probably like, God, no way, you're crazy. You just blessed me with him, and now you want me to give him up. I can't do that. But he was obedient, and he did that. And it makes me think of the disciples as well. They were fishing all night, and they didn't catch anything. And Jesus was like, okay, now I want you to go back out, and I want you to throw your nets in the water again. And they said, well, we've been fishing all night and we didn't catch anything, but if you say so, then we'll do it. And then their nets were overflowing and they followed Jesus ever since then. That's kind of our life, is like, you know, it doesn't make sense and it's crazy what you're telling us, but if you say so, we'll do it. And so I started praying for a free house, and then about a week later, Buddy called and he said, hey, a missionary family is moving out. We want you to move into the house and it will be rent-free. And we were like, okay, sign us up. And, we didn't ask any questions, we just said free house, and that's what God said. Right. And then we got married and we moved in. And the day we got there, we were like, what did we sign up for? I mean, if you guys know where we live on Potter and Clearfield Street, and we're from the suburbs, we're not from the city. And so, having to tell 10 drug dealers to get off your steps every day is not something that we ever had to experience. And having the ice cream truck run all night long, and the music and the cars, and we probably caught about 40 mice within the first month. I mean, we just line our basement steps with the sticky tracks trying to catch them all. So it was definitely culture shock, but we were just thankful that God gave us a house. And Buddy's advice was, be a light to your block, and your block is your mission field. And so that's really what we pursued, is our block. And one day we were taking it to the streets. We were cleaning the street, and we usually knock on doors and pray with people. So we knocked on our neighbor's door, and her 2 boys answered. And they saw that we were cleaning the street and they were handing out food, and they were so excited. They were like, Mom, these people are really cleaning the street out here. It's so clean. We've never seen it this clean. And they were like, Mom, they're handing out soft pretzels. We love soft pretzels. These church people are amazing. So we were like, from the first day we met them, we were like, these kids are really awesome and well-behaved and respectful, and like you could tell their heart for people. And so we invited them to church, and they started coming to church and boxing, second floor, anything they could do, they were here. And then their mom ended up getting saved, and the summer of 2019, the whole family got baptized. And that was just a really amazing testimony to how, you know, knocking on a random person's door can lead to them coming to church and coming to know Christ, and their whole family being changed because of that. And so we were like, okay, that was the reason why God planted us where we are. And, you know, this family was enough for what we had. And little did we know that it was way more than that. And I'll get to that in a minute. And then 2020 came, and we had our daughter in March, the day that everything shut down. So the day we went to the hospital, they were like, okay, well, actually, today we actually had to implement a policy that you can't have any visitors come in, and you can't leave, and if you leave, you can't come back. And it was very strict, and we were kind of like, oh, that, you know, it was all new, and we didn't know what was happening. And then we were watching the news in the hospital, and the NBA was shut down, and this was shut down, and like everything slowly started shutting down. And so bringing a new baby into our world and that much change, and then having everything shut down around us was really challenging. And my mom actually ended up passing away last year, and so that was also really hard for our family. And so it was just a really difficult year of like, okay, God, you still have us here, but nothing's happening, and we don't see the purpose in what we're doing. And she just kept saying, like, continue to press in, continue to prepare, continue to spend time with me, and I'll show you what that is. And so it was a full year of like nothing, basically. Everything that we knew was thrown out the window. We couldn't serve, we couldn't do what we were used to. But we still continued pouring into the kids and getting to know them more and having their family over. And the end of 2020, we found out that their mom actually had to go away for a few years. And we prayed a lot about it, and me and my wife decided that when she went away, we would take in her children, because we didn't want to see, you know, what Johnny's life was like happened to these kids, or what so many of you, not having parents there, we wanted to make sure that they were still in church and they were still in the Word, and their favorite place is church, and we didn't want to take that from them. And so we felt the responsibility to say yes. God was saying, just say yes and see what happens. And so we said yes. And then a week later we found out that my wife was pregnant again. And that was really challenging, because it was like, if we would have found that out before, we probably would not have said yes. It would have been easy to say, well, actually, we have to focus on our family and what we're, our lives, and it's just too much, God, we can't do it. And so I think sometimes it's really easy to change your mind and say, well, God, I know this is what you're calling me to, but I just can't do it. It's too hard. It doesn't make sense. It can't work. Now we need a bigger house, because our house is not big enough to fit the children. We need a bigger vehicle. We thinking about like haircuts and clothing and food, like everything that goes, raising teenagers. Like, we have a 1-year-old. We don't know what it's like to raise teenagers. And now we're bringing that into our family. And so it's just a step of faith in saying, God, if you say so, if you say this is what you want us to do, then we'll do it. And we don't know how it's going to be done, and we don't know what it's going to look like, but we know that this is what you're calling us to, so we're going to do it. And so that's just really my encouragement to you guys is, I don't know your lives. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what God's telling you to do, but if he's telling you to do it, then I would say just be obedient and just do it. If he's telling you to open up a business and you look at your bank account and you're like, no way, God, this is impossible, I can't do it. Like, be obedient and he'll provide all that you need. And I think the Rock and Buddy's testimony and the building that we're in right now is a testament to being obedient, to saying, okay, God, this is what you want me to do. Buddy wanted to teach some kids how to box, and now we have so much more than that, and we have so many buildings, and we're helping so many people. And I'm sure when he first started, he had no idea that it was going to turn into this. But one step at a time, and just saying, okay, God, this is what you want from me. You want me to do this, I'll do this, and I'll do this, and I'll do what you want. And so really just to encourage you guys that whatever God's calling you to today, it's better to be aligned with his will and have him on your side and watch him provide than try to do it yourself and fail every time. And so just to close, I think that verse is just a really good reminder to all of us that today when you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. So that's a little bit of our story, so thank you.